I had wanted to play Secret of Mana ever since seeing the box art as a kid. It's one of the SNES RPGs I've heard about the most and heard the most varying opinions about. There's some classic JRPGs that, in general, everyone seems to like, such as Final Fantasy VII or Super Mario RPG. That's not the case with Secret of Mana. I've heard everything from it's the best game ever made to it being an overrated, unplayable mess. Having never owned a SNES personally and having zero casual knowledge of the game, I didn't get an opportunity to find out for myself until Collection of Mana was released for Nintendo Switch and other platforms. The verdict, in short, is that I'm somewhere in between. If you play JRPGs for the story, you might not get a lot out of Secret of Mana. Apparently, the game was planned for the unreleased SNES CD as a much larger experience, but content was cut by more than a third for the final release. That's a shame, as with a more involved story and better written characters, Secret of Mana could have been a masterpiece. It's not a masterpiece, but it's still a great game and I can see why it's a classic. Secret of Mana is about a boy who finds a sword, a girl who joins him, and an amnesic sprite who go on an adventure to restore the sword to its full power, since the sword is, in fact, the legendary Sword of Mana. That's about it. There's not much story here, and the story we do get is a bit marred by translation issues. It's not unintelligible or confusing, but I get the sense that there's a lot missing in the English translation. No, story is not Secret of Mana's strong suit, that lies in presentation. This is one of the most beautiful SNES games I've played. Every locale, every frame is thriving with vibrant colors and music. Compared to Final Fantasy Adventure, which yes, I realize is a Game Boy game, playing Secret of Mana feels like I entered a 20-year futuristic time warp, even though the Game Boy and SNES were popular at the same time. The music, on the other hand, is hit or miss for me. I recognize that this soundtrack is beloved by many a JRPG fan, but for every catchy track that made me jam out was another that grated on my ears after a while. Still, the good tracks are great, especially that title theme. Man oh man, I love this track. The primary appeal of the music is the layers and production value, which are unmatched on the SNES as far as I can tell. Stories of the hoops programmers had to jump through to cram music like this onto a tiny cartridge fascinate me. Even if you have no desire to play this game, you gotta listen to the soundtrack at least once. It's a major accomplishment of the SNES era, and I recommend seeking out the arranged version after watching this video. More interesting than the story is the world of Secret of Mana. There are a few small hints in the game that you're in a sort of post-apocalyptic world where a large destructive force destroyed almost everything. Yep, it's another nuclear bomb allegory that's so characteristic of Japanese RPGs and Japanese media in general. At one point in the game, you enter a modern subway station to fight zombies long forgotten by the rest of the world. In another section, you hear sounds of a modern game show emanating from a mana crystal that seems to work like a time-traveling radio. All of this is never explained or even mentioned in the plot. It's up to the player to decide what happened, at least in the English translation. This kind of ambiguity that requires you to use your imagination is appealing to me in any kind of storytelling, as long as it doesn't go too far, and it's done well here. Navigation in Secret of Mana, on the other hand, is a bit of a pain. Characters do tell you what to do next, but you're often told only once and not always in an obvious way. If you pay close attention to all the dialogue, you won't have trouble, but this is one of those games where I had a guide standing by just in case. I used it a few times to figure out where to go next, but nothing here is as nebulous as in, say, Dragon Quest. With that said, I was not expecting there to be a world map in this game, let alone a traversable one, so the first time Flammy flew me up into the clouds was a revelation. Maybe it's because I'd never played a SNES RPG with a full world map before, but man, that was cool. Another constant annoyance, and probably the biggest complaint I've seen about this game, is the map scrolling. I won't mince words, it's horrendous. I was constantly running toward the edge of the screen, trying to make the map scroll over to show what's ahead, but the damn thing refused. It makes no sense that it's this bad, but it's not a deal breaker either. I never forgot it was a problem, but I did get used to it, and it's a flaw I can overlook. Then again, maybe I just have a high tolerance for bullshit. After having played Final Fantasy Adventure, Secret of Mana's weapon charge system was a little tricky to get the hang of. At first, I didn't like how weapons are essentially useless unless charged to 100%, but after a while I realized this makes the game feel more like an RPG. Combat is real time, but the charge time works like a cooldown, making combat feel more turn-based. It doesn't allow for hack and slash gameplay like the first title, but the trade-off is that magic is now more useful. Did I say more useful? I meant broken. Magic is the answer to everything in this game, making it a great change of pace from Final Fantasy Adventure, where magic feels optional. At least I rarely used it. An interesting mechanic is that magic can be performed faster by non-player party members due to fewer animation frames, so I stuck with the boy, Randy, as my player character for my whole playthrough and used Popoy's magic remotely. That's the name of the little sprite in your party. This was incredibly effective against most bosses, which is handy because there are a ton of bosses in this game. So many, in fact, that even those that were palette swaps didn't bother me. They're a ton of fun to fight, and are the best part of the game. Introducing new types of magic late in the game gave me a reason to grind and explore further, but this part did get old after a while. Beyond magic, you have several weapons to choose from, and I'm more lukewarm on those. While any character can choose from any weapon, there are only a few core weapons that are useful to the player: axe, sword, spear, and whip. These are used for clearing overworld obstacles or getting across gaps, while also being strong in combat. This leaves little reason for you to choose any other weapon, and I rarely did. It also doesn't matter which weapons you give your party members, as they are mostly useless in combat anyway. On top of this, there's a nebulous weapon level up system that I never quite understood. Weapons level up by being used, but leveling them up doesn't seem to influence their damage or effectiveness in any noticeable way, so I ignored this mechanic for the most part. Leveling up spells, on the other hand, greatly increases their damage, so I focused more on that. The grind got a bit tiresome by the end, but it wasn't too bad, so I'd say Secret of Mana is a good length. All in all, Secret of Mana is a solid game. It's fascinating how action-based gameplay was done in JRPGs back then, and it for sure doesn't feel like anything on the market today. If you're interested in classic JRPGs, don't skip this one. Thanks for watching this JRPG Quickie. Be sure to leave a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you want more.